On June 12, 2025, Mexican military forces killed Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, the founder and supreme leader of CJNG, in a firefight in the mountains of Jalisco, ending a 15-year American intelligence operation that deployed DEA informants, NSA signals intercepts, Treasury financial tracking, and satellite surveillance to systematically corner the most wanted drug lord on Earth. The DEA had first formally targeted Oseguera Cervantes around 2010, and every arrest of his lieutenants, every captured family member, and every intercepted communication over the following decade and a half was a deliberate step in closing the net around a man the State Department valued at $10 million. His death was not a lucky strike. It was the final checkpoint in the longest and most methodical cartel manhunt in American law enforcement history. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was born in Aguililla, Michoacán, in 1966, the son of avocado farmers in a region known for both poverty and violence. In his late teens, he crossed into the United States, drawn by the same border routes that would later serve his criminal ambitions. By 1992, federal agents in Texas arrested him on heroin trafficking charges. Court records show he was convicted of conspiracy to distribute heroin and sentenced to 3 years in a U.S. federal prison. After his release in 1995, Oseguera was deported back to Mexico, carrying with him not just a criminal record, but first-hand knowledge of American law enforcement tactics and the inner workings of the cross-border drug trade. Back in Michoacán, he entered the local police force, but quickly left behind any pretense of legitimacy. He joined the Milenio Cartel, a group that controlled much of the methamphetamine traffic through western Mexico. Oseguera worked his way up, learning the logistics of smuggling, money laundering, and armed enforcement. In the late 2000s, as the Milenio Cartel fractured under pressure from rivals and the Mexican government, Oseguera seized the chance to build his own organization. By 2010, he had founded the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG, recruiting former police, soldiers, and cartel defectors, and setting up a network that blended local roots with international ambitions. CJNG quickly gained a reputation for brutality and innovation. In May 2015, the group made global headlines when its gunmen used a rocket-propelled grenade to shoot down a Mexican military helicopter near the town of Villa Purificación. 9 soldiers died. The attack was more than an act of defiance. It was a clear warning to authorities that CJNG would meet force with force, using military-grade weapons and tactics. Intelligence analysts in both the US and Mexico recognized that this was not the pattern of a traditional trafficking group. The helicopter attack forced security planners to rethink the threat. CJNG under El Mencho was now a paramilitary force capable of challenging the state itself. That escalation set in motion a new era of American and Mexican cooperation, and a campaign that would span the next decade and a half. The formal hunt for Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes began in early 2010 when the DEA opened a dedicated case file and launched Operation Jalisco 1. The threat posed by CJNG had moved beyond rumor and headlines, and now it demanded a coordinated response. The first actionable lead came from a confidential informant embedded in a logistics cell near Zapopan, who described a new methamphetamine facility, codenamed Plataforma 3, and named Oseguera as the man in charge. This tip landed in the hands of a newly assembled task force, a group that brought together the DEA's Special Operations Division, the Strategic Intelligence Unit, and the Interagency Liaison Office. Each played a distinct part. SOD managed covert surveillance and undercover work. SIU fused information from human sources and technical partners. IALO kept the channels open with FBI, ICE, and Mexican Federal Police counterparts. The 2010 case file, stamped confidential, outlined not just Oseguera's criminal history but the structure of his growing organization. Investigators mapped out his network, from street-level enforcers to financial facilitators. Early tactics were classic but effective, including physical stakeouts outside suspected labs, wiretaps on phones linked to known associates, and monitoring of cash shipments crossing the border. The first human intelligence dossier, built from informant interviews and surveillance logs, gave shape to Oseguera's daily routines and travel patterns. Every detail, from the cars he favored to the safe houses he frequented, was logged and cross-checked. As the task force gathered these threads, they began to see the outlines of a larger, more sophisticated operation. The initial informant report was just the beginning. Each new piece of information was fed into a central database, where analysts searched for patterns, connections between names, addresses, and phone numbers that might reveal the next move. The groundwork laid by Operation Jalisco 1 would soon support a much broader intelligence campaign. But in 2010, the focus remained clear: find the man behind CJNG and map the organization before it could slip further into the shadows. In 2014, a surge of encrypted messages pulsed across cartel communication networks in western Mexico. At the NSA, crypt analysts pored over the data, searching for a way in. The challenge was formidable. CJNG had abandoned off-the-shelf encryption and relied instead on a custom-coded app with layered keys and shifting ciphers. For months, every intercepted packet was a dead end. Then, a breakthrough. A small team in the Tailored Access Operations Division detected a flaw in how the cartel's black box protocol handled key exchanges. By exploiting this weakness, analysts decrypted a stream of command and control messages. The contents revealed not just orders for drug shipments or weapons transfers, but precise timestamps and locations for meetings, supply runs, and safe house rotations. Each message carried a digital fingerprint, coordinates embedded in routine logistics chatter, now visible for the first time. With this trove unlocked, the next step was synthesis. Signals intelligence alone could not pinpoint a moving target in the mountainous corridors of Jalisco. The Joint Interagency Signals Intelligence Working Group formed in 2016, blending NSA cryptologists, DEA field analysts, and data scientists from the FBI and Treasury. Their mission was to fuse decrypted messages with geospatial data from satellites and commercial surveillance feeds. High-resolution imagery from optical and synthetic aperture radar satellites was layered atop the message traffic, matching convoy departures to heat signatures on rural roads. When a message referenced a clean room for fentanyl synthesis, analysts scanned recent satellite passes, flagging new structures with unusual nighttime activity. To manage the overwhelming volume, the Fusion Cell trained a machine learning model on millions of data points, vehicle clusters, cell tower pings, intercepted calls, and satellite images. The model learned to flag patterns, recurring routes, sudden changes in convoy size, or the appearance of temporary encampments in remote valleys. By late 2018, this AI-driven approach could generate real-time heat maps, highlighting likely CJNG movement corridors and stash locations down to the block. Each alert was cross-checked against financial transaction spikes and human source tips, winnowing false positives and focusing field teams on the most promising leads. The result was a new kind of targeting precision, where once the hunt relied on luck or informant whispers, now a fusion of decrypted signals and geospatial tracking could narrow El Mencho's footprint to a handful of safe houses or convoy routes. This technical leap did not just map his movements, it allowed planners to anticipate his next steps, setting the stage for the coordinated pressure that would follow. The scientific rigor behind this fusion, signals broken, pixels mapped, patterns learned, transformed the search for El Mencho from a scattershot pursuit to a methodical, data-driven campaign. Banks in Guadalajara began reporting a surge of suspicious cash deposits in 2014. Each transaction over $10,000 triggered an alert to the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. The volume and frequency of these deposits pointed to a laundering pipeline that stretched from Jalisco's cash-heavy restaurants and construction firms to offshore shell companies and real estate holdings. To cut off this flow, the Treasury issued geographic targeting orders in 2015. These GTOs forced every financial institution in the region to document and report large cash movements, building a database that mapped the money trails of CJNG's inner circle. The data revealed patterns impossible to ignore. In 2018, the Treasury's Office of Asset Management, working with federal prosecutors, froze and seized $45 million in assets tied to CJNG. The haul included cash, luxury vehicles, and more than 3,000 Bitcoin, all linked through forensic accounting to cartel facilitators. The seizure order cited violations of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and the Narcotics Control Act, making it clear that financial disruption had become a central weapon in the campaign against El Mencho. Without access to this capital, the cartel's ability to pay off officials, purchase weapons, or expand operations took a direct hit. Legal pressure mounted in courtrooms across the United States. Federal grand juries in Washington, D.C., and the Northern District of Illinois handed down indictments against Oseguera and his lieutenants. These filings detailed the structure of CJNG's laundering operations and named key associates, placing the organization under a public spotlight. The Department of Justice and Treasury worked in tandem, leveraging these indictments to justify further asset freezes and to coordinate with Mexican authorities on joint enforcement actions. By 2022, the State Department offered a $10 million reward for information leading to El Mencho's capture, one of the highest bounties in the agency's history. Then, in February 2025, the United States formally designated CJNG as a foreign terrorist organization. This move unlocked new legal authorities, allowing for travel bans, global asset seizures, and international cooperation on an unprecedented scale. At its peak, CJNG was moving an estimated $200 million a year through its network, with operations touching at least 35 countries. Each new statute, order, and seizure boxed the organization in, tightening the net not just around El Mencho, but around every financial and logistical node that kept CJNG running. The pressure was relentless, and it was only just beginning to be felt inside the cartel's human network. Pressure on El Mencho's inner circle began to mount in 2015, not with shootouts or raids, but with a slow, methodical campaign targeting his closest family members. The first major blow landed when his son, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, known as El Menchito, was arrested in Mexico on drug and weapons charges. After a series of legal maneuvers and years in custody, Ruben was extradited to the United States in 2020, where he faced federal charges and by 2024 began serving a life sentence. His removal from Mexico stripped CJNG of a key operational planner and sent a clear message: no one was untouchable. In February 2020, Jessica Johanna Oseguera Gonzalez, El Mencho's daughter, was arrested outside a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., just after visiting her brother following his extradition. Jessica faced charges tied to managing businesses sanctioned under the United States Kingpin Act, including restaurants, a tequila company, and advertising firms accused of laundering cartel profits. She pleaded guilty to violating United States sanctions and was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Her conviction offered prosecutors new insight into the CJNG's financial networks, exposing shell companies and hidden assets that had previously evaded detection. Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, El Mencho's wife and suspected financial chief, was detained twice in Mexico, first in 2018 and again in November 2021. Each time, authorities pressed her to cooperate, freezing assets and scrutinizing her role in laundering millions through Jalisco businesses. Those arrests, combined with earlier detentions of other relatives like Antonio Oseguera, forced the cartel's leadership to operate with growing caution. A Family Target Liaison Cell, FTLC, coordinated efforts across immigration and customs enforcement, Homeland Security investigations, the FBI, and Mexican law enforcement. The cell synchronized arrest timings and plea negotiations, sharing intelligence through a secure platform that tracked every interrogation and financial disclosure. With each arrest, El Mencho's protective circle shrank, his options narrowed, and his movements became more frantic. The campaign did more than disrupt logistics. It sowed distrust, forced relocations, and weakened the cartel's ability to shield its leader from an expanding web of surveillance. Medical analysts inside the Department of Homeland Security began to notice a new vulnerability in 2023. Intercepted insurance claims and compromised electronic health records from private clinics in Guadalajara revealed that Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was suffering from stage 4 chronic kidney disease. He required 4-hour dialysis sessions 3 times a week to survive. For years, El Mencho's strength had been constant movement, never sleeping in the same place, always shifting convoys, never sticking to a schedule. But chronic illness changed that calculus. Every 48 hours, his security detail had to bring him within range of a dialysis machine, narrowing the geography of his world to a handful of clinics in Zapopan and Tlajumulco. A specialized medical intelligence team fused these health records with travel logs and satellite imagery. By mapping vehicle convoys against the timing of dialysis appointments, analysts identified a repeating pattern. Each treatment window forced Oseguera into predictable locations, surrounded by a limited perimeter of bodyguards and trusted aides. The clinics themselves became focal points for geofencing, virtual boundaries that triggered alerts whenever unusual activity or high-value targets entered the area. This process transformed his greatest asset, mobility, into a liability. The more his disease progressed, the more tightly his routine was bound to the rhythm of medical necessity. The ethical debate over using protected health information in a manhunt was heated in some corners of the intelligence community. Legal counsel at the Department of Justice reviewed the circumstances, ultimately concluding that, because the data was sourced from foreign systems and involved a non-US national under active investigation, no American privacy laws were breached. For operational planners, the calculus was less abstract. The next raid would be timed not to his security detail or cartel business, but to the unyielding schedule of dialysis, a window when escape was least likely, and his location could finally be fixed with precision. At dawn on June 12, 2025, the mountains outside Zapopan were quiet but for the low thrum of armored vehicles. Mexican Army Special Forces, guided by a sealed intelligence packet, moved into position around a nondescript compound beside a private medical clinic. The terrain, steep, wooded, and riddled with narrow switchbacks, offered cover but few escape routes. Inside, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was tethered to a dialysis machine, his convoy parked just out of sight. The operation had been timed to the minute, exploiting the one window when his movements were dictated not by security but by medical necessity. A 3-kilometer perimeter locked down the area. Special forces breached the service entrance, neutralizing a lone guard with swift, silent force. In the main room, Oseguera sat flanked by 2 bodyguards. There was no firefight. He was taken into custody without resistance. The room swept for weapons and cash. 12 firearms, over $1 million in cash, and 2 portable fentanyl synthesis kits were seized within minutes. The compound, outfitted with reinforced doors and surveillance feeds, offered no warning fast enough to change the outcome. Within the hour, a helicopter lifted off for El Paso, carrying Oseguera and a team of FBI forensic technicians. In a mobile field lab, technicians used a rapid PCR protocol to analyze a mitochondrial DNA sample. The process, refined for speed and accuracy, produced results in less than 40 minutes. The DNA profile was compared against a reference swab collected during a 2019 DEA warehouse raid, generating a match with 99.999% certainty. The confirmation was relayed up the chain to Washington and Mexico City. That afternoon, President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed the nation. She credited Mexican forces with the operation's success, underscoring national sovereignty, but acknowledging the multinational intelligence campaign that had brought the world's most wanted drug lord to justice. For the first time in 15 years, the hunt for El Mencho was over, his identity beyond doubt. Today, United States intelligence tracing cartel leaders blend satellites, wiretaps, and financial targeting into a global hunt. Yet fentanyl deaths in the United States still surpass 70,000 a year. El Mencho's end proves precision manhunts can decapitate empires, but cartel networks regenerate in the shadows. The architecture evolves, but so does the threat. The question now, can relentless pursuit ever outpace adaptation? Thanks for watching. Share your perspective in the comments.